Our planet is running out of time, be it the extreme depletion of the fresh water or be it the melting of the glaciers. And that is why it's even more important to talk about conservation efforts. And I have with me the CEO and the Secretary General of WWF, who has been the front runner of conservation efforts. And if we talk about WWF, a Worldwide Fund for Nature, it has been the largest organization for conservation efforts. And today, we celebrate the Earth Hour Festival 2025 in collaboration with the World Water Day. Sir, my earliest memory of Earth Hour would be how we all sort of, were asked to switch off the lights from 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. at night. It is a symbolic commitment to our planet. But do you think that turning off the lights will solve the, unprecedented issues that we are seeing around us? Or do you think turning up the pressure on people in power is the need of the hour?
Actually, neither, because, you use the word symbolic. This is what it is. It's a symbol. It's a symbol of the action that we should take in our lives, which is, which you can see around you and you can discern, you can make a difference with your neighbors. And also to perhaps spend some time thinking about your earth, your planet, your country's environment, your ecology, your world around you, and try and see if all this is around us. Can we change with our habits? Can we change with our way of, living, transportation, usage, water, etc.? I think pressurizing those on power, yes, that is a way forward, but that's one side of it, because when you look at issues of climate change, most of the work that is in terms of policy or mitigation, even adaptation, is somehow people feel that this is the government's work or the government's job. And very, very little of it is really in the lives and the change of citizens and adaptation of practices by them.
Right. So we're talking
about...
about...
This is what the 1 hour is supposed to perhaps give you time to pray for the earth and say, this is what I can do.
Absolutely. I think a collective effort along with individual responsibility is the need of the hour. But talking about power, talking about way of living, we are currently in the national capital. And we know how important the double whammy of air and water pollution is, how it affects our lives. And now with the newly formed Delhi government, they have promised that the Yamuna will be cleaned up within 3 years. Sir, with your wisdom, with your experience, how do you see this promise? How do you view this Yamuna cleanup promise? Do you think it is practically possible? And they're also planning to make the Yamuna a tourist spot. Do you think it will be good for the environment, firstly? And secondly, do you think it is possible to clean up Yamuna in 3 years?
It is possible to improve the quality of water from where it is now to make it much more, much cleaner than what it is, and would probably get it close to your ability to bathe in the river. You won't be able to drink from the river. And drinking rivers are few and far between in our country, and most of them are in the areas of the source. So in 3 years, 3 years is a long time for somebody who's dedicated to the idea of the work, and to make the things, firstly to make the existing installations work, secondly to repair what is there in terms of infrastructure, and thirdly to bring in new capacities to be able to make this happen. It is possible to do it in 3 years.
And about the tourist spot?
That's one. Secondly, if the river is cleaned, you also need a place for people to go and see what's happening, and perhaps even influence the fact that it needs to be cleaned more, or new things need to happen. So there are ways of doing this. The biodiversity park, which has been set up near Wazirabad, is already an example. People go there and see this. The new gardens coming up on the side of Kalindi Kunj are another example. So these are areas that are possible to do this. I'd say that if you set yourself a target to do something, and you say, I'm putting this up and I want to see my environment better than what it is bound to happen because you will make it happen.
Right.
If you keep dreaming, then you can wait for another 25, 30 years to make this happen. When I was a student and I was in Delhi University, it was possible to swim the Yamuna, and there were swimming competitions. The other side of, say, cross-country swimming, so freestyle swimming, 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers. And there were events held like that. Today you can't swim in that river, but it was possible, and we did this deterioration of the water over the years. And what I'm saying is that you can bring it back, because the river, at some portion in almost close to Delhi, in Haryana, is a place where you can bathe, you can use that water without compunction, there's no smell. And then diverting the drains, improving the STPs, these are things that we need to do for our city.
Right. So we can take bath in that water. The quality of the Yamuna waters can be improved. That's what you're saying. But we might not be able to drink that water. It's not practically possible to make it as good in terms of its quality within a span of 3 years. That's what I could infer from what you said. So, of course, today we are also celebrating World Water Day, UN World Water Day, and the theme has been, about the preservation of the glaciers, because of the rapidly melting of the glaciers. We know the effects of its, I just wanted to understand from you that recently we saw Mr. Wangchuk protesting, and he has been demanding that this commission should be formed that will take into account the rapid melting of the glaciers in Himalayas particularly. What is your take on this?
See, if you live in the Trans-Himalaya area, and if you live at that height in that area, people like Sonam Wangchuk, I mean, most of the people would sympathize with him. Not necessarily only the citizens and free citizens of India, but also the officials and the policymakers and all that, because something that is visibly happening in front of them. I cannot talk about the commission, or that's outside my purview, but I can say the environmental aspect is pretty, significant to be looked at, and not just because of the population and the increase of tree cover in that area, but also the transportation, the amount of, the diesel cars and all that. That the footprint, the human footprint, is pretty, significant as compared.
So, what is the way forward to this? What do you think?
What is the way forward? Firstly, I think go for the 2 or 3 things that are the most visible to you, because all this, you can't do anything by making a huge change, but making a 2%, 5%, 7% change, you can add up the sums to this. So, management of waste, management of the emissions that come from vehicles, particularly vehicles and generators. Now we have alternatives possible. Thirdly, being conscious of the amount of construction that you're going to have in Leh itself. Being conscious of building in a way that doesn't sort of create a certain disturbance and heat, etc. And being very conscious about where you are extracting from, both in terms of the rivers as well as the sites to make your thing. Even this you may feel is not sufficient. But if you do this, similar to your question of the Yamuna waters, if you do this in a stepwise basis, we'll at least be closer to the larger solution than what we are today. Now, people have to go to Ladakh and see it. Planes have to land there, because there's no other way to have tourists going there for a shorter period of time. So we'll have to do something else, or not do something else somewhere. Another way to be to spread the the population away from the immediate valley, which is of course difficult for people then to live because they have to live in a habitable portion. And to manage this period of time, because remember we are only talking about 3.5 months of habitation in Ladakh, because the rest of it has to be taking the time to recover, to make all those, and in that time, by the way, no construction is possible. It'll take time for it to settle down, etc. So these are some of the solutions.
Right. So, talking about development taking place at the cost of environmental degradation or, livelihoods being at the helm of it, and we cannot overlook the intersection between environment and human rights, right? And of course, we know that the whole Great Nicobar project is ongoing, and it has stirred up a lot of controversy that that the lives of the people are at stake because of the increasing urbanization, increasing construction work in.
You're talking about intersection of livelihoods and intersection of development and environment. If we've taken on a certain target for ourselves, that we want to be a 5 trillion economy, and the 5 trillion economy is not going to stop at 5 trillion, and there's a certain push from the back and it goes further. Unfortunately, it's going to have an impact which is negative on the environment, one way or the other. You'll have to work on mitigants and all that. And there is a way of thinking that when we have done the basics, then we'll go back and improve the environment all over again. Parts of India, this is not going to be possible, especially the areas which are dry, arid, etc. And the remaining corridors, if they are gone, they're very difficult to bring those back. Things are better understood now than they were understood earlier. NHAI has guidelines with regard to this, how they're going to make the flyovers, the highways, diversions, etc. Railways too have this as well. This was not possible 20 years ago. How do you make this intersection possible? This is not just the environment that you're talking about. I think India is working on a policy currently where you also worried about your arable land going under urbanization increasingly and depleting long capillary aquifers so that you're drawing water here, but you don't have water where you need it. So these have to be taken in a much bigger sense. Is it happening to that extent? I think thinking is happening. We ourselves are working with some groups within the government to see what's possible in this side. The biggest issue which you're talking about is about urban planning, where the cities and towns are, where hamlets will become small towns, which will become big towns, will become sprawling, unplanned, a huge amount of investment thinking has to go in there. So as to prevent the resources that you have, whichever resources, you have limited resources, to stop the sprawl that is taking place. If you take the highway, you don't see this today if you drive from here to Dehradun. But if you drive through the old road, there is very little open space left between Delhi and the cities beyond on the way to Dehradun.
We cannot just blame the expansion of the small farms, but it's also the corporates who are building.
It's not a question of blaming. It's a question of planning and zoning. We cannot just allow unplanned cities to just expand. Because a corporate, as you mentioned, they would have to go through a proper approval process to do this. But I think in other places, proper planning should say, this is where you can zone and build, and this is where you cannot build. I mean, we are able to at least save some of our natural areas because of this kind of thinking. But if you fly over parts of northern India, you see hamlets everywhere. And that's got many reasons for it. It's also because of social change, it's because of smaller families, smaller holdings, etc. I think we need to take a policy. It may take us 20 years to make a change, but this needs to change.
Right, right. Sir, because of the paucity of time, I have to move to the next topic. But of course, talking about policy, of course, we know that the wildlife conservation, we know it's also a very significant thing that needs to be done at this point in time, because studies say that, in India, by the year 2070, the human-animal conflict will be a global hotspot in India. So the kind of conservation efforts that WWF has taken has been amazing, has been incredible. Be it in the Sundarbans, be it in Kerala, Karnataka, we have seen extremely inspiring initiatives taken by WWF. But what other conservation efforts are you looking at in terms of wildlife conservation in areas like the Western Ghats, the Sundarbans, other areas which are not the prominent hotspots of human and animal conflicts, other areas where we are seeing a rise in animal-human conflicts? And also because we are seeing more and more reportage of those kind of conflicts. Earlier, we did not see much representation of those issues. But at this point in time, how do you see we can amp up the wildlife conservation?
So be careful about more reportage being the trend line. That's only at the national level. But if you're at the state level or at the district level, a lot of the conflict that was happening is known. And even in the past, people knew what was happening, what was seasonal, why the behaviors were changing. I do not think India will be a major hotspot in 2070. The reason being, recognizing areas where there is a problem and looking at the response. There's also a response of the communities. There's a response also from the government with regard to this, as to how to meet this at a very micro and local level, and whether that is possible.
So we have seen your efforts in protecting tigers and elephants. Which animal do you think at this point in time it requires more attention, more spotlight should be given by the government?
I think there are two parts. One is from a single animal point of view, the elephant, because people respect the elephant. They don't want to hurt it, beyond trying to move out of the way. And mortalities are taking place because of electrocution, because of various reasons. Some cases even poisoning takes place. Accidents, because they have to move across the herds, have to move on. They die in the railway tracks and things like that.
Any particular state that we're looking at?
Not necessarily. I think a very large number of incidents happen in the eastern part of India and some in the southern part of India. But if you meet a person who is in charge of an elephant reserve, you talk to him, he'll say conflict is my number one issue. One of the aspects of that to manage is, one is the provision of water. Second is the provision of adequate food. So deterioration of natural habitats because of invasives and because of other reasons have led to reduction of food, which is also the reason why animals become habituated, particularly elephants, to going out for their raiding parties. But there are other stories too. Villagers give them space or tell them, we are the ones who are encroaching on their land, move them out gently, take them out. There are many stories like this in Assam, in Bengal, also in other parts of our southern states. With this kind of intervention, which is intelligent, science-based, based on local customs, we have seen a reduction in those kind of conflicts. So it's not all pessimistic. The other part is somehow perhaps more difficult to manage, which is because of dynamics of the habitat. The ungulates move out into agricultural areas. So there's grazing in that. The wild boar moving 20 kilometers a night, sometimes even more, but for food and for all this. And that is much more difficult to manage. The government has, for instance, in Uttar Pradesh and some other places, in Madhya Pradesh, given a compensation for crop damage. Crop damage compensation takes time, but is then, at least it gives the people to say that the government is active in doing certain things. So it may seem small to you at this point of time, but with a number of these actions taking place, they're not baby steps, they're very, very, lot of thinking has gone behind this. It's not a question of lights and fences alone, it's also much more than that. The seasons make a difference. How much barish is there? How much is rain doesn't come on? What is the flow of rivers? What's the water bodies? How are they? So these are issues that we need to worry about.
Right.
And you are only seeing one part of this. And I must bring this out. You hear of a lot of bird counts taking place in the city, Delhi, Chennai, Trivandrum, Kolkata, etc. And a number of birds, number of species are. What you're not listening, not you, but generally not hearing enough, is that the actual population of birds is going down. The numbers we used to see 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and now.
Is it because of the impact of the climate change, the increasing
climate
global
change,
warming?
It's food, it's chemical interventions, and loss of habitat. The cropping patterns have changed. The millets have gone out to the bajra, etc. Used to give a regular food to them, and all this. So that also has a huge impact on us. So things like pollination, spread of food, fruiting trees, all these will be impacted. You won't see it now, but in your own this thing, by 2070, you'll see a big change. I think that as much as the large mammals need to be looked at for time being.
My last question to you, sir. After the COVID-induced pandemic, there was a lot of talk about the wildlife health policy being formulated. And right now, sources are telling us that it is being formulated by the Environment Ministry. How important do you think that this kind of policy should be there, so that we do not see a similar incident taking place in the future, and also about monitoring the health of animals?
So I'm glad you are thinking like that, because this concept is termed as the One Health policy. Good health for the environment, good health for the people who live there, then the continuance of ecological flows, and with those flows, that as long as there's natural processes, whether in the forests, in the soil, as well as in the rivers, then the natural processes then make sure that your environment is healthy. This is ultimately, and all the zoonotic diseases are because they've been confined in certain places, or they've evolved in that kind of a situation. So your thinking is in the right direction. This One Health policy is now moved out of the terminology, moved out of discussion phase, to actually looking at some actionable policy interventions by the government. And it's not only the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. It's also the Ministry of Health, and it's also the Ministry of Agriculture. And they've been pulled in also by MOEF, CCE into this and saying, please, let's talk about it. Because it is so apparent today. And we are able to somehow, in certain areas of our work in the landscapes, we are able to connect these dots to show that this is happening in a particular way. This is how it could be prevented. In the rhino landscape, for instance, this is one. The elephant landscapes, elephant movements, behavior, etc. is the other. I'm mentioning to you about birds, but there's also the role of pollinators. Disappearance of pollinators relating to some of this, which leads to...
So if you could just give us a sense of this wildlife health policy, why do you think people should care about this?
Why you should care in a very different way, more impacting perhaps. To give you the impact of bird flu, or to give you impact of some other viruses, where there's a chance of the virus traveling from a domestic bird to a human being. Or, in the case of COVID, to go back from a human being to an animal. And if this becomes widespread, it is going to be devastating. Because no longer a question of wildlife. It's a question of life itself. Yeah. And human health and life. And that, the thinking forward is that there are going to be many more pandemics. It may not be at the scale of what we have seen. It may not be a global pandemic, maybe local to that extent, but you're going to see many of these. If you don't change your, way and study it and see this. So today, medical and scientific studies are now being looked at for policy, inputs and impacts, which thinking was not there earlier. It was there in a scientific sense, and the doctors told you this and all that. And the best thing I'll tell you, go to your doctor, ask him or her this question, saying, I'm not coming to my health, I'm asking you the health of what's happening, and is this correct? And most of them don't even take a nanosecond to answer you and give you the reasons for this. So it's there, it's practical, it's happening. I think India is a little bit forward than other countries, if you compare. And you'll see the results of these policy impacts in the course of next year.
Any current projects or projects that we will see in the near future where we'll see WWF in collaboration with the government undertaking any conservation efforts?
I think, all the other projects, most of them that you have. I'll give you two which might be interesting to you, or more perhaps. One is this entire thing. You will see One Health from WWF working with the government on One Health program. Working this. The second is something called a Central Asian Flyway, CAF, which is a policy, which is an agreement between nations, and India is a signatory. And we will work with the government to make sure that the Central Asian Flyway is properly mapped, the places where the flyway is effective, like the wetlands, lakes, all the way from Himalayas, all the way down to southern India. And then what are the main areas of the use and how could they be preserved and things like that. So that's a big one. You'll keep hearing about our program on the rhino, the tiger, and the elephant. We've got a red panda program that we're working closely with Sikkim government and North Bengal in Bengal. You might hear more of our program with brown bears in Jammu and Kashmir, as well as hopefully in other parts of India. I can go on, I would say.
There are lots happening.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of, we are going to take on more work on studying and for the conservation of the basins of the Satluj and the basin of the Chambal, and working on, the conservation of species on both sides and the health of the river. Also work on wetlands, dolphins certainly.
Saw a beautiful dolphin installation unveiling today. And how important do you think the conservation of the river dolphin is at this point in time? I mean, very few people know this, but it is our national water animal.
Yeah, it's an indicator. What is this? There's one river that on which millions of people, their lives depend on it, and if this dolphin numbers go down, you have a problem on your hands. So there's a lot of numbers not gone down. The estimate is around 6,000 to 7,000 dolphins in Gangetic dolphins. There are other dolphins also, but in the Brahmaputra and the Ganga, and there's much more attention to it from science, from conservation, from counting, from looking at the habitat. So you'll hear and see more of that.
It's an exciting time for an environment reporter, I would say. And thank you so much, sir, for this insightful conversation. So your last word for our viewers on the Earth Hour Festival 2025.
So I'd say be positive. Take actions around you, around your life. uh, people come and approach you for knowledge or for, what should be done, etc., then each one of you should have your own little chart or write-up. This is what I can do and this is what I can talk to you. This is what is right for me. It's difficult, it's not easy. It's not easy to change one's life. But perhaps you can make that small difference that will make a contribution. Well, what else? Be kind to wildlife. Be kind to, those who depend on you. Human being is the dominant species of the planet, and we control both the resources as well as conservation to a large extent. And I think to that end, we also owe it as a good human being to take care of our environment entirely.
Right. On that very special note, we must remember and pledge to be kind to not only other human beings, but also to the planet, to the environment around us, as well as the animals. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. Thank you so much, sir.